My apologies to keep those of you waiting, though. I had to restart the stream after a little malfunction on my end and just Twitch's end. But that's beside the point. Let's get back to qualifying. For those of you who were joining us prior to the stream starting, you noticed that it was a wet qualifying, but not enough for intermediate tires. So most of the people out there are on the soft tires. If not, everybody is, because as Valk said earlier, the softs seem faster than the inters. However, compared to before, I do have a second person joining me this time. I've got Titan alongside me. Good to have you here for what's going to be, I think, 95% of the stream, I'm pretty sure.
Well, fingers crossed, because I'm planning I'm only going to be around until about, or basically just about an hour and a half of the stream. And, well, I'll also mention this is my first time spectating and helping out on the stream for Formula Endurance. I've never done it before. I've heard a lot of great things about it, and I'm just curious to see how these guys handle in what is essentially a 100% event.
Yeah, and probably the quickest circuit you can go around with 100% event. We got AERT Zach making his debut tonight. He was signed to the Red Bull Academy last night as a reserve, and good to see him here. What else do we have as well? George is on loan for Red Bull. Oh, we got a spinner. That's Scyther around. We've got Luke Grange, who looks to be maybe on a lap here. Either that or an in-lap. He is now on PC, racing tonight. Winner in F1 Tier 1 here most recently, in wet conditions, funny enough. And only other names to mention, really, for certain things is AMS Yano and Ferrari, and ETS are late in reserving, and Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, quite a mixed bag. Oh boy.
Hit the wall there.
Just Charles Shanghai go spinning.
Yeah, and I think this track is getting a little too wet now. Don't know if we can go on board with any laps, but we're going to go on Valk one last time here to try to get a lap around the circuit. She has got a Ferrari in front of her, and I think everybody's starting to realize this track is getting a little too wet. Even though the rain's not getting any worse, it's still just a little too wet. Those turn 1, turn 2 curbs, a little tricky because you don't want to touch them. You really don't. You may want to touch them very slimly, but nothing more than that, because those curbs could send you spinning, could send you flying, whatever the case is. Turn 3 flat out toward the inside right side curb. Now turn 4 and 5 here. Again, you can touch these curbs, but you got to be careful on how much you touch them. As you come to the Lesmos, you got to stick to the inside curbs here and go to the left side. Same thing said for the second Lesmo. Then you've got Ascari and Parabolica to negotiate your way through, and 2 easy sections to invalidate your lap time, especially Ascari.
Absolutely, as Valkyrie's hanging down there. Just a tiny bit above of what time she had. A little bit of a squirrely here. Her teammate just went a little really squirrely. That's the chiller back there. She heads down to Parabolica, to basically the final part of the track. Let's see as she navigates her way through. Not too bad, not too bad at all. She gets right back on the power. And Gecko goes fastest with a 23.8. And Valk improved in the last sector. Only puts herself 10th fastest with a 21.
I say conditions are getting worse, but it doesn't seem too bad when you see Owen improving, and now Gecko going faster, 23.8 at the top of our board. Who else is on a lap? We got AMS Yano for Ferrari, 217 still with these conditions down the main straight. Now at turn 1, he's in 3rd gear, and coming out of turn 2, trying to get on the power. You got to be very careful getting on the power in that corner, regardless of if it's the dry or the wet. Hunted's around. He's out of the session. Another yellow flag for McLaren.
Second Lesmo.
And that's a tricky section as well. We will watch out for. But now turn 4 and 5. We have Yana, who's up by 3/10 on the board. These curbs he's using just to his advantage, just to tap him just a little bit. He's right on the edge as he comes now to the Lesmos section. Think someone else improved maybe there on a lap time. Nope, never mind. Other way, out of the second Lesmo, he's got DRS applied, rear wing open fully, and now into the run of the Ascari corners. Let's see what Yano's at. 5/10 up. Easy place to invalidate right here. Track limits will catch you out regardless of the condition, but Yano seems clean through there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yano's working his way down towards the parabolic, getting to right around 207 miles an hour into the braking zone. It looks like the rain is not affecting him too badly, so track isn't getting too wet for the conditions, and he goes 5th fastest with a 24.6. However, he is 8/10 off his teammate of Gecko.
Crazy thing with this condition, it just looks worse than it actually is, but I think it's just dying down now. It's so hard to tell sometimes because you see the spray being kicked up and you think it's worse than it is, and it just isn't. Scyther, championship leader in Formula Endurance. He leads Jack by 21 points. Gecko 25 points back, leading this session, but Scyther, what can he do in this sector? It's a 10th up on the board. It would set him ahead of Hunted, the Academy teammate. Now he comes through the chicane, the second one. Easy through there. And now toward the inside curb, gonna ride the outside curb a little bit. And the second Lesmo here looks clean. No issue there. Revving it out. Now to 6th gear, 7th gear. And here he comes to Ascari corners. And he will be 2/10 up on our board right now. But if you're Scyther, you're wanting to find more time here, seeing where your rivals are at in the championship. And easily through Ascari, very clean, and just on the exit curb, right on the edge.
Absolutely, and into the braking zone of Ascari, gets up to 215 in that Alpine, so he's just screaming on through as he builds up the power up in there, and he's up to 5th, 24.5. He's 4 milliseconds behind the Red Bull of George, but they're putting on a stomper in the Alpine.
The Chiller had his home race yesterday for F1 Tier 1. How about add another one here for Formula Endurance? An Italian driver racing in tonight's race here for Aston Martin. Here he comes through turn 3 now. He's going to try to go to the far inside here, I would think. Yup, just on the exit there he's going to. Hugging the inside line. He's got cars to his left getting out of the way. Darius is down on the time. And jumping over these curbs, the second one not as pretty, but here he comes to the Lesmos now. What's the Aston Martin driver going to do? Season 1 F1 champion, trying to find some time here. He's a previous winner in Italy in RPL F1 Tier 1, but now for Aston Martin, all you can ask for here is just a good qualifying lap as he now comes to Ascari. What's the lap time going to look like? 4/10 down, so he's not finding any time whatsoever. Now the question has to be asked, are the conditions getting worse, or is the Chiller simply not improving at all?
I mean, anything is likely. He did ride up a little bit on the curves in the second variant chicane, so that could be a factor on why he's so far down. I don't know. As he comes out of Parabolica, is he going to show any improvements? And the answer is unfortunately no. He still stays where he is in the 7th place spot.
That's unfortunate for him. We're going to go on board with AERT Zach in his debut, coming through turn 2. He did a recent Monza race here in a different league that I steward in, so he's got some experience around here. However, same cannot be said about the wet conditions, though. Here he comes with his first sector split, a 10th up on the time, so he is improving in the Red Bull. Now, over these curbs, looks to be clean. Actually, he didn't take the inside curb where Darius actually ended up losing some time, it looked like. Now through the Lesmos for Zach, checkered flag is waving. This will be it. Zach going to come through the second Lesmo with tons of speed just on the curb. It looked like it was a little bit wide, but I think he should keep it okay. Now the inside curb where he's going to hug and try to find some time. What's the sector split going to be like for the driver making his debut? Purple, 3/10 up. Checkered flag for Jack Miles. He did improve, I think, slightly, but nothing in places. Beatnik crashed out of the session. The AlphaTauri, that's Invade. He's going to be slowest of them all. And now, the first driver who could take pole position in Monza is the driver making his debut for tonight's race. The question now becomes, as he comes out of Parabolica, can he do it? Zach comes across the line, and it will be provisional pole!
A lap there, and here comes the Chiller across the line, puts himself 4th fastest. Very good run there. Here comes George now. Can he respond to his teammate? only switches with the Chiller. Luke goes to 5th. Here comes Scyther, goes to 6th. What about Gecko? Can Gecko respond?
Not gonna do it.
And that answer is no. He's not getting any higher up there. Looks like next is Kipu with Owen right behind. Kipu stays at 15th. Owen stays at 3rd. Leighton invalidated. He's heading back. At Shanghai, the last one across, and that is going to be that. AERT Zach debut and pole position on his debut.
Welcome to RPL. Welcome to RPL, Zach. Pole sitter. First ever time in your first ever race. I think some Tier 1 teams and Tier 2 teams are going to be looking at the sky wondering, can you make these times? Here's your lineup. Zach, Gecko, Owen, the top 3. 3 different constructors make up that top 3 spots. George, the teammate to Zach for tonight, on loan. He's 4th place. Luke, teammates with Owen tonight. Winner in Monza Season 9 F1. He is 5th place. Then running at the top 10, you got championship leader Scyther. The Chiller, Yano, Hunted, Beatnik. Outside the top 10, look for some names such as Jack Miles, Valk, and I'd even say Kipu, who could probably do a little bit better than that in the race for sure, but slowest with his teammate Invade in the bottom 2. Dry race it looks like. We do expect a 1-stop, whether that be soft hard, medium hard, or a 2-stop. We saw a 2-stop in Spain at the bare minimum. I think there was only one driver doing a 1-stop, but if there's a 1-stop tonight, likely going to be on mediums to hards. And 23.5 seconds you lose in the pit lane, but 23% you gain back on that battery. Going to be a crazy one here with Slipstream going to be playing a big factor in tonight's race.
Indeed, it will be, as everyone's just getting their setups all set, getting their setups all figured out, their tire strategies all solved. Just taking a look in the race director just to see who is currently going on what at the moment. Unless it changes, I see one guy going on to the softs, one person giving it a go on the hards, but it's pretty much dominantly medium tires for everybody.
So I'm expecting then mediums to hards if we're not seeing a 2-stop. Easily going to be done. Valk says she's going to go soft hard, going to go different than others. Interesting. Let's find out how that works out for the Brazil driver. And no rain in the race, I've been just told. So, good sign there.
Well, good. Like I said, I still say that anything can change up, and just have to wait and see what's going on. But yes, but Valk giving it a shot, going soft to hard. That's going to be an interesting choice on her end. I wonder if the person going on to the hards. Oh, 5 lights.
5 lights are coming on, and now it is pedal to the metal, and it's go in Monza. The Slipstream going to play a big factor. Zach's going to try to cover that off, and now here comes Owen, having a look on Gecko already. Going to be double wide into the first corner. The Monza Chaos at turn 1. Can they avoid it? Everyone, Constantina effect through turn number 1, turn number 2. The 2 Mercs are side by side throughout the field. We have 3 wide. Shanghai's taking the runoff, but he seems to be the only one in trouble here on the opening lap so far. Now you've got 3rd place up for grabs, but further behind that, Scyther going to get previous teammate to Chiller, and now George going to look around the outside, and he's going to use the run-up, and he's going to have to use the run-up. He's gone too deep.
Did George wind up going too deep? Because I was on board with the Chiller. I wonder if it was maybe a possible combination. He got too deep and had a little help from the Mercedes that wound up going wide. But at the start, Owen had probably the greatest launch. He tried to make an attack to try to get by both, but Zach covered him off, and Owen almost got clear of Gecko, but just couldn't fully execute it to get past. And in the chaos of turn 1, there was a sandwich between the McLarens and Yano. Yano stuck in the middle of that McLaren sandwich, and he wound up coming out pretty badly out of it. He's down in 10th place in the Ferrari.
George had no other choice but to take the runoff on the right side, or else he was going to run into the back of both Mercedes. Rather running to the side of one of them or run to the back of the one further up. Now for the race lead, Gecko on Zach. Gecko's going to have a look already on the inside line. Is Zach going to be able to defend this? Zach around the outside line for the inside line for the next corner. Will keep it. And now Owen going to pick off Gecko. Switchback time. He takes second place. And now for the lead with the battery being deployed around the outside. This is squeezing time from Zach as he tries to defend the lead. And he will keep the lead. Wow.
Zach put up a very hard defense against Gecko, and Gecko stuck out on the outside of turn 2, and that left them completely vulnerable for Owen. And Owen just went, "Thank you very much, I will take advantage," and he's up in the second place. He nearly tried to get past Zach for lead, but unfortunately, Zach had a little bit more straight line speed in that Red Bull compared to the Mercedes.
He is low on fuel. He did underfuel, Zach did, but he's conserving that battery in the meantime. And now, on this straight, DRS will be enabled next time by. They'll have it after the Lesmos on the run to Ascari, as we just came out of. And keep in mind, with Mercedes here around the circuit, they do have a good history. 10 Tier 1 podiums. And in fact, Red Bull, they have 5 Tier 1 poles around this circuit. So both teams have a history here in Monza. It's who's ever going to take the advantage, though, in this game, with Red Bull being the faster car, Merc being the slower one. And now we got some peaks from Gecko. He's going to clip the inside curb. That's going to affect him. Luke's going to go into him. Contact, still contact. And the Alpine of Scyther had to avoid in the 3-wide sandwich. He's now going to have to duck in behind Gecko and Luke. 3-car race for third as they continue down toward turn number 4 this time. It will be Gecko holding on. Scyther still wants to have a look. He's going to have the Chiller having a look on him to try to make some moves, but can't get anything from it. They all go in behind one another once again in this race, and looks like we still have a DRS train now all the way up until 13th.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just on board with Gecko. He got caught off a little bit by Owen when Owen braked in the braking zone. Gecko was a little caught off guard, almost hit into the back of Owen, and that's why he almost looked like he went for an attack on the inside, but he came out pretty worse for it. Luke, then him and Gecko made contact. Scyther tried to take advantage, and they were in a tight 3-wide coming out of turn number 2, but given the 3, Gecko, Luke, and Scyther on how experienced they are and how composed they are in certain situations, they managed to avert a major disaster.
So now it's top 11 in DRS. We've got at the back of the field, Kippu and Shanghai. We're just making moves on one another. They're going to trade spots once again on the main straight. Everybody getting through cleanly in turn 1 and 2. It's been a very clean race so far from the start. The only big issue I saw was obviously Shanghai in the runoff. And like you said, just everyone having to avoid each other at turn 1 and 2. But the usual RPL chaos we see in the opening turns in laps around this circuit seems to be avoided for now. And these 53 laps, folks, I know there's 6 of you watching tonight. Don't expect a boring race. This is going to go by quickly. So this circuit does end up providing some really quick races. It's actually been one of the quickest races in F1 without any races ending early, though, with that being said. Big winners on the start. Hunted up 2. Invade up 2. He needed that. Down 4 from George, down 2 from Yano, down 2 from Jack. Those are the losers on the start, but nobody making any serious gains, though, on this race start. It's just everyone playing the long game, it seems.
Indeed. I just took a look at the tire compounds that everyone is on. Valkyrie, as you mentioned, is going on to the softs. She's going soft to hard. Jack is the one that's on the hard compound tire. Everyone else is on the medium compound tire. And in the Twitch chat, Invade is going to be doing a 2-stopper. He says he's going to be doing medium soft for his strategy.
So a variety of things with 100% race here in Formula Endurance does provide a little bit of mixture of things from our drivers. You don't always know whether they're going to do the common strategy or the ballsy one. We've got a spinner. It's Shanghai around. Invade also now side-by-side racing with a teammate. But yeah, Shanghai, the first cause of yellow flags during this race, it comes on lap number 5 as Owen by the way, we did see during the main straight using tons of battery to try to catch up to Zach, but he's able to conserve some of that battery. He's got some of it back now. We'll see what happens with DRS enabled on the third time now down this straight.
Absolutely, and I wasn't too sure on the map because I caught it a little bit late on my end, but I'm thinking, I wonder if the Williams with Shanghai, he got involved in an incident with both of the Alpha Towers at Kipu and Invade, because Kipu and Invade were in that little mini train with Jack and Leighton of the Alfa Romeos. Now they're over 7 seconds back. I'm thinking maybe the three of them got together in the back, and that's why they're so far behind now. Just taking a look, where Gecko is thinking on planning an attack, but I don't see any opportunity for him to attack just yet. As they head down into the braking zones at turn 1 and 2. Look, George just made an attack, going on the outside of Hunted. They bonked into each other, and George does successfully get clear Hunted up into 7th place.
The thing I'm noticing with these front 5, 6, maybe 7 guys is this accordion effect. It will definitely catch some people out if you're not careful. You gotta brake earlier than the guy in front of you. No doubt in my mind about that. If you don't, you might end up running in the back of them or causing a collision. That's why Scyther had a qualifying ban in Spain, because he's done that way too many times in these DRS trains in this 100% race. He did it in Portimao. He did it in Silverstone. He had it happen in Zandvoort. He had it happen 3 of the first 3 races, in fact. And it cost him penalty points to end up having to sit out a qualifying session. But now our race leader, Zach, just 98% on that battery. Seems to be conserving things well. Seems to be holding on to this race lead in defensive mode quite well, I must say. But now it's time to find out who will change things, as Scyther not going to wait any longer on Luke. He gets the move done there. Gecko on the back of Owen, trying to swarm up a move there. Gecko's got less battery. Now Owen going to try to charge after our race leader, Zach, and he is coming quick. Is Owen going to get him? No, he's going to wait and stay behind once more.
Indeed, indeed. I'm just noticing on the ERS deployment from the top 5, just before they went onto the main straight, the top 5 have over 60% ERS available to them. Owen and Zach have a full battery at their disposal, but then when you go to the Chiller and George, oh, Gecko just got by Owen.
I think Owen made a mistake.
Yeah, so aside from that, when you go back to the Chiller and George, if you're looking at their ERS deployment, they're below 30.
Yikes. Gecko's now at 59%. And by the way, championship scenarios we need to look out for. Gecko, 25 points back from Scyther. He's ahead of his second place rival, Jack. But because Gecko was disqualified from the race last week under the safety car, it cost him a ton. He was shafted from that, to say the least. As for how that turned out, Scyther won the race. Gecko, 0 points. So now he's going to have to mount an attack on our race leader, Zach, to try to cover that gap and get it back. Here he comes. Gecko. Does he look for a move at turn 1? No, he's going to elect to stay behind, and he kind of has to because he's not close enough to go for a late lunge and make it work.
Yeah, just saw in the back. Yeah, you had to hold off on that one. Just saw in the background, George attempted to get past the Chiller to claim 6th place back. Attempted to try a switcheroo out of turn 2, but just couldn't fully execute it, as the Chiller has made himself wide enough to keep George back. But I mean, George holding his own in regards to it. And just a look, when I was mentioned about the ERS deployment of some of these drivers, the 2 drivers that are the worst off in regards to the ERS deployment is the Alfa Romeos of Leighton and Jack. Those 2, less change, they're under 20% of their ERS, so they burn through a lot of their ERS. And I mean, it is a bit tricky to regain it back, as Gecko just got himself the first penalty.
That is going to be crucial for this race. Something that you were mentioning about the battery that's also crucial to mention is if you're not a DRS train like Leighton and Jack are not, and they're not in this pack at all of cars, the thing is, it's going to be so much harder to save battery. But sitting behind these guys like you have been from Gecko onwards, it's going to be a little bit easier to conserve a bit of battery. Gecko with the penalty. Does he try to get by Zach now? Yes, he does. He has a sneak down the inside. He's going to cut in front of Zach and take the lead of the race. Behind that, Scyther looked like he wanted to have a move on Owen, but now the two leaders are going to go side by side here toward turn 3. Zach will remain ahead as he got the exit out of turn 2. Gecko now has a lot of... Whoa, Zach got in the grass. I was going to say Gecko has a lot of overspeed. Does he use it, though? No. Scyther covered by Owen on the outside line right there. Causes a little stack up in the background, but that's exactly what I mean. That stack up is going to cause some of these guys low on battery to save some of that they need to. If they weren't in this DRS train, it's going to be a little bit trickier to save some battery, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, that for temporarily, Gecko had the lead, but just couldn't get locked up going into the turn number 1. That's what allowed Zach to capitalize and retake the lead, exiting out of turn 2. I mean, just all for the brief, Gecko had the lead, but just that one little mistake, one of him losing that lead right back. We'll see how he tries again, this time on straight.
Let's find out. We have Scyther already ducking out on Owen, trying to make a move. Further on back, you have the Chiller and George. But now for the race lead. Gecko's going to go for it again. Yellow flags for Shanghai. Crash out of the race. It will bring out a safety car. Everyone has to go single file now. And nearly a collision here from the Mercedes.
Yeah, Luke almost got to the back of Owen. But from what I just saw Shanghai crash in a Scary. That's what happened. That's why our first safety car has now been deployed. But yeah, Scyther just in the nick of time managed to get past Owen to claim 3rd place, and everyone was slowing down and keeping their delta positive. Luke almost accidentally crashed into his teammate.
Hey, I did release a video on the RPL YouTube for you guys. 12 times teammates clashed. And it did involve a Mercedes before. So would not be the first time, would not be the last time, I would assume, as well. So I do expect these guys to maybe have an idea in the back of their mind under the safety car that you could make this either a 2-stop race now with the safety car being out. Invade, bringing a perfect example of that, going to hards. Kipu as well. Because you could go hard softs, or you could try to go hards the rest of the way. Hards probably are going to last anywhere from 35 to 40 laps, maybe slightly more with a 100% race. But with the safety car in mind, it will be a little easier to make it to the end now. No doubt about it. Luke Grange can be the first one to stay out. Then you got George, then you got the Chiller. I think there was a late decision to go into the pit lane. It may have been caused by Hunted to get a speeding penalty, 5 seconds to his name. I don't see many people double stacking. It's just the 2 Ferraris as far as I'm aware. And then the 2 Alfa Romeos. But the 4 drivers who stayed out are Luke, George, DeChiller, and Beatnik.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at it, it's a mixed bag for everybody. But pretty much most of these guys that came in, with the exception of Valkyrie and Leighton, they were... Not Valkyrie and Leighton. Valkyrie and Jack, they were all on the medium compound tires. So, Zach onto the hard compounds, Echo on another set of mediums, Scyther, Owen on hards, mediums, Jono, hards, Val gets on the softs onto the mediums, Leighton switches to mediums, and Jack goes from hards to mediums. So most likely, given with what's going on, I mean, pretty much the medium guys that came in and went on to another set of medium, they have to do another stop later in the race.
Well, if they are doing another stop, they're likely going to go a second set of mediums or softs. The end. Softs not going to wear too badly if you're on it for the last 10 to 12 laps. But yeah, these guys on hards, they're thinking with the safety car, they can make it the rest of the way, or that they are the tire whisperers. Yesterday in the Tier 1 race, Race Dainty had like 12 to 15% better tire wear than the guys around him. And that's crazy enough considering 2 of those 3 guys were on same tires. Shanghai, our first retirement of this race, bringing out the safety car. I don't know if we've had a safety car free race here in Formula Endurance. I feel like we maybe have. I think we maybe only had one. But it seems like our DNF rate has been at least decent for the first 5 rounds of this series. Either way, for those of you still tuning in, 6 of you watching, here's where we are at for next week's races for all tiers. Tier 2 will start us off for the weekend under the lights in Saudi Arabia on the streets of Jeddah. F1 returns to Monaco, or on the streets of there. Hopefully I can convince the admin team to make it a night race, considering it's our 10th season of racing in RPL. Would be special to do so around Monaco. And then Formula Endurance next week. If you're wondering where we're at Hungary. That will be round number 6, halfway point of the season.
That would be pretty interesting if we were saying that Monaco planned to be a night race for Tier 1. That would be pretty dang cool if that happened. If it does happen, this will be the second time in Tier 1 that Monaco has been done under the lights. The last time we had a Monaco race under the lights was in Season 2. I mean, it was basically my last Tier 1 race that I've done. And not only was it pretty unique racing around the streets during the night, but it also didn't help that it was a wet race too.
Oh, yikes. I feel like we've had night qualifying under that circuit. We'll have to see. Chat, we have 40 laps remaining once we get back to green flag racing. Give us any predictions in chat. We would like to see what you think will happen for the remainder of this event. Some drivers still weaving and bobbing, trying to warm up some tires. Luke Range, the winner here in Season 9 in Tier 1, is going to lead us to the green flag. When does he go pedal to the metal? The answer is going to be now. Back underway for Monza. He's going to drain the battery already too. And in fact, considering he's won a Monza last season, we have to mention that he's won a Monza 4 times as well. Here's a big race on the main straight. Owen, Hunted, Scyther, make it Gecko. All a gaggle of cars toward turn 1. Beanick trying to make a move. We have trouble, I think, from some guys locking up. And now, out of the exit of turn number 2, little bit of contact between Beanick and Zach. Zach stuck his nose in there. Beanick had to avoid the contact getting any worse. And now Gecko on the move with Owen. Gecko around Beanick now. Toward turn number 4. Can he do it? He's got the inside line on Beanick. Beanick has to go a little bit wide. Gecko takes the place. And now Beanick is the one in front of... Oh, spinner. It's Yano. Yano's around.
Oh, man, that is not good for one of the Ferraris to go spinning around. I was on board with Owen while he was chasing down people. He was bumping and banging with Gecko on the main straight and out of turn number 2. And Gecko, I mean... playing a bit of a rough style. He gets himself up into 5th. But I mean, he does have that penalty. Now he's in pursuit of Zach right now.
Gecko and Zach. Big race with them right now to try to get to the leaders. But Gecko does have a penalty at the expense of that. Owen also behind Beanick, trying to get by. He knows if he gets by Beanick, he can chase after DRS here, using the battery as Owen. But now for the lead, George already not going to wait. He's going to go to the inside line, and he will take the lead of this race for Red Bull. The second Red Bull to lead, and now 3 wide to turn 1. Zach, inside line onto Chiller. The Chiller inside line for turn number 2. Gives Zach the squeeze, but Zach gets the traction. He out-tractions him, and now it's the chance for Gecko to do so. Further in the background, Beanick losing places, but Gecko will gain a place onto Chiller.
Yeah, Zach just went full-fledged to go down to try to get past the Chiller. Now, the Chiller, like I said, did have the inside out of turn 2, but the traction and the racing line is not there right away on the inside. It's that outside lane that gives you the better traction and the better line, and Zach took full advantage of it. And is now back into the podium place. And we got trouble. Jack has crashed.
Jack is up in the air. There's a McLaren involved, and now it's the virtual safety car. That was Beanick who put him up in the air after Jack DNF'd. And Jack out of this race, second driver. It's an Alfa Romeo.
Oh,
who have been doing really good in the constructors table. Jack second in the championship. Championship implications for him.
I know the ironic thing is that when you said that Jack was up in the air and stuff like that, this ain't the first time Jack has gone airborne. I mean, if I could be incorrect on the season, I think it was season 6 in Mexico. In the just before the braking zone to turn
That's
1,
true.
Jack went full-blown airborne over a couple of cars and wanted to be involved in a big incident. But I mean, that's the second time that I know of that Jack has been airborne in an F1 race.
All I do know from that incident is he's not happy with Beatnik. He is just very frustrated, to say the least. Virtual safety car has been out for quite a bit. I do expect it to end soon here. And will Luke pounce on George now becomes the question. Is George going to help out the teammate, the academy teammate for today? George is on loan, so I don't know what would happen there. Drive through for Invade, and he might not be the only one. He is the only one, actually. There's just 3 other drivers with penalties. Others are for track limits and speeding. However, back to green flag racing. Gecko, I think, just having a look right there. And now Luke's got the boot. Luke's around. Luke got the boot from Zach. And now Owen's involved. Owen's out of the race. Gecko's involved. Big incident. Owen has hit the barrier out of Ascari. And Gecko plummets down the order 2. That's a 4-car collision there. And now there's more spinning. It's Scyther around the championship leader.
Oh my god. Chaos and pandemonium. I was on board with Luke, and I believe, I could be incorrect from the angle I was watching it, but I believe Luke had help by Zach. I think he had help being spun out.
He absolutely did, and now Zach is going to try to take second place over to Chiller. Zach just making a mistake in the braking zone in his first event here, not knowing the braking from the other drivers. Hunted now will take 3rd place in this race over to Chiller. Both Aston Martins are in the top 5.
Wow.
And just to point out the trouble, Titan, in a span of 60 seconds, maybe a little bit more to be exact, all 3 of the top 3 in the championship had trouble. And speaking of one of the drivers in the top 3, Scyther does get through on Yano.
My goodness, this is just chaos and pandemonium. We saw Luke getting spun at the beginning of the Ascari, then Owen and Gecko getting involved in an incident together, and then further down in Parabolica, Scyther had a problem too.
Man, look at where this puts some people. ETSR Layton now up to 5th, gonna push the Chiller along. Yellow flags, that is for Gecko again. 3 wide, there's contact. Layton somehow straightens everybody out and doesn't have anyone out of the race, but that could have been race-ending. Hunt to DRS on Zach now as Invade pits.
I think what I saw from Layton, he had to avoid the sudden lag spike from the Chiller. And when he went into avoiding mode, Valkyrie was there, but thankfully the 2 did not get into a severe incident. As Zach, by the way, just on the outside, on the inside, gets clear of Hunted, and he is up into 2nd place. So now, right now, Red Bull 1-2 at the moment.
Gecko saying the car is undrivable. He has red rear wing damage from the 2 incidents he's been involved in. So he is maybe going to be retiring in the pit lane as the car is undrivable. But Hunted, who has a penalty, by the way, is now looking to take off Zach for 2nd place. Remember, George still has to pit. The Chiller still has to pit. Layton is up there for Alfa Romeo. Valk is up there for Aston Martin. Some really good runs now could be happening in this race for some drivers. Now, with this race kind of being wide open as well because of the absolute chaos.
I mean, in a sense, this is basically becoming a repeat of last night. Oh, 3 wide. Valkyrie gets clear of both her teammate and Layton, and I think Layton just give it a little shove for that. But yeah, I think with that craziness that happened with Luke spinning, Owen crashing, Gecko in trouble, Scyther spinning out, this in a sense, deja vu in a way, because, I mean, take last night. Cookie had problems with his equipment, and that basically blew the race wide open in all aspects of both championships. In this sense, with everything that happened in the chaos, this is basically blowing this race wide open too.
Zach is going to stay behind Hunted, but he had the DRS and had a chance to maybe make a move into Ascari. Didn't want to risk it. Already made one mistake at Ascari. Could be facing a penalty from the stewards later on, but we'll look out for that midweek. With that being said, you mentioned a race that kind of got wide open. How about a race in Tier 2 that got wide open recently? Japan. I believe the first race in 2024 in RPL. We had 2 Ferraris enter trouble. We had 2 McLarens enter trouble. And that made an Alfa Romeo of Gecko on the podium. And we saw Valk from the back of the grid up there for Mercedes. And Zach is giving Hunted a squeeze, and Hunted's around. They've come together. And that's the second time Zach has made contact with another car in the last 5 laps.
Oh my.
This is getting trouble for the driver making his debut.
Yeah, just caught that just in the nick of time, and right in that background, Valkyrie and Leighton brawling. This is literally for the last step of the podium. Kind of crazy to see Valkyrie charging away to looking at a potential podium at the moment, and also Leighton as well in an Alpha. This is just mind-blowing in the sense of it. But I mean, to be fair, we're about to enter lap number 20 in the next lap, but still, this has become one heck of a chaotic race.
2020 Austria, real life? Am I feeling this? Come alive? Zach right in the back of George now for the race lead. Both Red Bulls going to fight it out. But in the meantime, we need to remind you of the two people. One of them is a guy, one of them is a girl. Valk, girl power right here. 3rd place for Aston Martin. Let's mention the fact that in F1 cars in RPL, she's only ever had 1 podium. It came with Mercedes, and now she's fighting for her life to stay on it. Up in front of that, Zach's looking to take the lead. We'll watch this as, oh my God, the McLaren car, Beatnik, not ghosting as he comes out of the pit lane, retiring. Here's a move being made from Hunted. Contact with Valk. These two have history. Leighton takes over the podium. Valk holds on for 4th. Now, it becomes single file, but my goodness, it's not single file for the race lead much longer. Zach's going to go for it. He's going to go on the inside line. He's going to break a little bit later than George and will take the lead of the race. He regains that place. But Leighton, I feel like it's been a long, long time. It's been since either the F2 days or the Tier 2 days when he had a chance at the championship the last time he took a podium. And he's on it for Alfa Romeo right now. And like I said with Valk, she's not, a loner when it comes to winning. She's won an F2 before, but she's never done so in F1 cars. But she's also only ever had 1 podium in F1 cars in RPL. Came in Tier 2 Spain last season.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little bit further info to go on a little bit later. I guess Beatnik, the reason he was done is because he had the exact same thing that Gecko had, red rear wing damage. That's why he is unfortunately out as well. And I guess Scyther might find himself in the more trouble, because I guess apparently Gecko, with Gecko and Owen coming together and Owen crashing, I guess apparently Scyther sandwiched Gecko into him, with him and Owen coming off worse. So Scyther facing trouble again.
3 top cars, McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes, have 1 car out of this race, and now you saw the DRS pass from Valk on Leighton. These two have a bit of history too. Here's Hunted making a sneak down the inside. He caught the corner in the process, going to pick up a track limit warning, and all that's going to allow the guys further behind to do of Yano and Scyther is to gain back up. And honestly, I'm going to say this right now, Luke Grange, 9 seconds, further back, not out of this surely for a podium unless he has damage of himself, or for himself on the rear wing like others had.
Just look at his car. It looks like he is okay. I don't see any front wing damage on his end, so he is in the okay shape. He's in okay shape. Just a slight further back from him, Kipu in the AlphaTauri looking at potential points as well. That's going to be slightly good for AlphaTauri. As look, we got trouble. That's Jono around in Parabolica.
Now he's stuck on the
Stuck.
curb. Oh no, and he's gonna reset. I
Yep.
think he might get okay with that simply just because he was stuck. I don't think the Swords will have an issue with that. But Leighton gets a shove from Hunted. Hunted now gets put to the gravel for just a second. And now here comes the Chiller taking advantage on both of them. The Chiller in his home race is going to try to pick off Leighton. He's got Hunted to defend from, but Leighton has now just lost DRS from Valk due to that. And I think Scyther, by the way, only 2.1 back, only caught 3/10 right there with this massive battling. I think he's one who has rear wing damage, but he has to stay in the points and stay in this race just simply because he's got a 21-point lead. If he has another bad race himself, he could be overtaken for the championship lead if he doesn't score tonight, but he's trying to score at least a couple of points to stay in this. Now he's starting to gain, but I think he's got damage surely on that rear wing. There's no way he doesn't with how his pace has been so far since that crash.
I'm thinking possibly as well. Yeah, but yeah, I feel bad for Yano because I mean he got involved in a couple of instances. And then when he spun in that Parabolica, I mean I just saw it on my end just watching him. He was actually legitimately stuck on that little ridge. As just see in the background, Hunted clearing the Chiller. Let's see if no, both of them are hooked together to get past. As
Luke's around.
Luke has gone for a spin now in Parabolica.
So he's out of this race surely in terms of fighting for a top 8 spot. That now promotes Kippu up to the top 9. We've got more battling for 4th place here. This is all happening behind Valkyrie on those medium tires. You've got the Chiller trying to stay behind Hunted and think about the right time here to maybe make a move or just follow him along. Leighton is there too for Alfa Romeo. Now Scyther add his name to DRS right here. He is in 7th place and now he's in this 4-car race here for P number 4. Hunted does have that penalty though, and the Chiller going a little wide, kicking up some dirt. Should be okay. Now going to use some battery, but keep in mind, all these guys in this 4-car train have below 35% on that battery. So could come into effect later on.
Very true indeed. And also don't forget George, the Chiller, and Luke. They still have yet to make their first stop happen. Everyone else has already done their first stop. And quite a chunk of them are probably going to be sec with, well, we know, well, with the hard tire guys, I mean, it's possible they could go the rest of the race. It's very risky, but I mean, it could be possible to be done as Scyther in the background just cleared Leighton to get himself into 6th place. But the guys that are on the mediums for 13 laps right now, Leighton, Hunted, and Valkyrie, they are gonna have to do a second stop. Well, with Hunted and Leighton is because they started on the mediums, they went to another set of mediums. Valkyrie, she started on softs though, but I mean she'll have to do another stop. She'll have to do another stop a bit later on.
I expect that extra stop to come in the next either 10 to 20-ish laps. It depends here because that soft to medium crossover does happen quite quickly to say the least, at least when the mediums become faster than the softs, but we'll find out what tire those guys looking to do 2 stops such as Hunted, Valk, and even Leighton do go on. We'll see if it works out or not for them. Hunted, a little wiggle there out of a scurry. He should be okay. He's back in DRS of Valk, but doesn't really have the battery compared to Valk. Valk has twice the amount the battery that Hunted has. And obviously George
is in.
gets a pit as well. Now into the pit lane. We got a yellow flag again. It's Yano. And it's a virtual safety car because he's got no front wing. And this is a perfect time for some of these guys to pit. And George is one of them.
And George is one. Hunted has come in, but don't forget he's gonna be serving that 5-second speeding penalty that he got earlier. Leighton in, Scyther in.
No double stacks.
Off and away. So Leighton, Hunted, George on the hards, Scyther on the mediums. Now Scyther was on the hards. because he's starting on mediums. He's now on a new set. As Kipu, crazily enough, gets ahead of them from that VSC. Kipu crazily AlphaTauri in 5th place right now.
When I told you I felt like I was watching 2020 Austria over again from real life, I was not joking. Especially the one where it was like 10 cars left. Yeah, I mean, we've got 11 cars left in this race. I know 16 of them started, but you know, we're not even halfway. We're only a couple laps from there. And it is getting chaotic still. So, you had Jan all around, causing the virtual safety car, the second one. You got Zach leading now, over ahead of the rest. And, you know, he's been involved in 2 collisions. If you're Zach, the only thing you can really do in this situation is just pull a big enough gap to where the stewards can't penalize you. At least enough to lose a race win. They're going to penalize him regardless. He's at fault for both collisions, in my honest opinion. I'm not going to try to, you know, be biased or anything like that against anybody. He was at fault. It was quite clear. But pull a big enough gap to where you don't have to end up being penalized enough to lose a race win. Or at least be stripped of the podium, you know. Kipu goes a little wide. Scyther takes advantage. That's his place now. Leighton looks to do the same. He does do the same. And the only driver in this race yet to pit is home man De Chiller.
Yeah, De Chiller, the only one yet to do his first stop. As you were mentioning above with Zach facing trouble for his instance, I can't say on what he might get if he wound up being involved in the incident when hunted. I mean, basically because I'm his co-TP, and I don't want to sound biased with that. But if I did have to say this on him on this collision with Luke, depending on how bad it could have been, I mean, he is most likely possibly going to be subject to a 5-second penalty for that collision with Luke. Or he might get subject to a 10-second penalty if the stewards feel the hit was more severe than initially thought.
I'm thinking at least 10 seconds at minimum for both collisions, but now De Chiller is in, looking to make this a one-stop race. He does get it in just enough to be within the speed limit. As for the rest of this, though, George is, 20 seconds back from the lead? So it's going to depend on what Valk does. Second place for Aston Martin. I don't know if she risks this. I don't think she does. But she said she's going to go soft hard. And she's on mediums, though. So it's different from what she said prior. We'll see what happens from it. But we have an Alfa Romeo running 5th. We have Luke Grange picking up a penalty. We have an AlphaTauri in their home race as well, running 6th. The Chiller, who just pitted, is on hards and going to be on the charge surely. Still not over for a podium for George. Or, sorry, not George. De Chiller. He's going to have to chase after George, who's on that podium right now. Good showing from George, by the way, after what happened this weekend. Tier 2, not the best of showings at all. I really think there's a lot of criticism that could come his way based on the performance. But we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll definitely give him the benefit of the doubt for Tier 1, considering the fact that he had a qualifying ban, and he would be second on my driver of the day list from that race in Tier 1, where he ended up starting second to last and finished, I believe, in, 6th or 7th spot. So, and he also got caught in the double stack when he was 6th or 7th previously and gone back there. So, George does deserve the credit from Tier 1, but now he's in a Red Bull, and he's going to be in the top 3 after, you know, being on a compromised strategy. And you know, I mean, you're in a Red Bull. It's kind of easy to do in that sense, right? But he deserves the credit at the end of the day for doing so, and he could even be taking second place with a 2-stop from Valkyrie here. Here's a 3-car battle toward turn 1. De Chiller hunted Kipu. Hunted. Ooh, kind of going a little bit of a dummy here. It's Hunted going to have to stay behind, but Kipu has been overtaken by 2 cars right here. And I think if you're Kipu, 8th place here in this race, I know there's been a lot of chaos, but 8th place still is not bad here. And it's a good run, considering you just got some motivation from your team principal, Cryptic, not too long ago, saying, you're doing the right thing, keep it up, we'll give you some more chances in the Red Bull if they do come here soon.
Absolutely, indeed. And just out of curiosity, what is the expected time loss for a pit stop at this track?
23.5 seconds.
23.5
without
seconds.
the VSC, though.
Okay. So regular. So just under green flag conditions,
Yep.
23.5 seconds. So if Zach winds up pitting right now, he'll be roughly a second behind Scyther at this moment because George right now is 20.8 seconds behind Zach right now. He was over 21 seconds earlier in the lap, but he did gain a few tenths in the span of this lap. And if when Valkyrie goes in, she is expected to fall down to 7th place at the moment. And Hunted just went down the inside on the main straight, gets cleared to Chiller, and up into 6th place for him now. As the Chiller falls down to 7th in the Aston Martin. I mean, fair credit. I gotta give fair credit to Aston Martin. One other car is sitting in 2nd right now, but I mean, she is expecting to make another stop. The other one's sitting in 7th. It's a good, strong effort for the Aston Martin team. I'm not also discounting Leighton as well. Him and the Alfa Romeo in fifth place right now. This is nice, good, crucial points for Alfa Romeo. Oh my goodness, he got a little loose at the last moment. Leighton kept the car together. He's doing pretty good for himself in that 5th place at this moment. And I will say, no doubt in my mind, despite we're just at the halfway point of this race, Leighton, in my opinion, is a very strong contender for driver of the day, in my opinion.
Still got 23 laps to go, so a lot can still happen. We've got a race on our hands for 3rd place. It's Scyther and George. Scyther on those mediums going to try to go on the charge. 10 seconds back from the lead is Valk, by the way. Just something to note in terms of Zach being penalized later on, likely. Scyther going to go deep, and he will make it. Wow, that was late on the brakes. George going to try the cutback. He has a chance to do so. These two do have beef. Scyther used to race for George's team in Ferrari. George, no longer the team principal. He's on loan for Red Bull tonight. So will George try to go for a dive bomb? The answer is no, but Scyther is ahead. And Scyther really went for a late lunge and made it pay off a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And just seeing in the chat, apparently, I guess there was more issues, more discussion in regards to the Gecko Owen incident. And I did say that that Scyther was possibly involved into it. Beatnik did mention saying that Scyther potentially sent him off, and that also was involved. But apparently Jack noted that, I guess, from the sounds of it, potentially Beatnik may be sharing responsibility for the incident.
Interesting. Well,
That
is
all
why Jack
pending
was
the
out of the
Stewart
race, I
report
remember.
later.
Yeah, we'll have to see. So we got DRS now. George and Scyther. Gonna swap again. It's George in front this time toward turn 1. Also, 3 wide. Lane being overtaken by both Hunted and DeChiller. And DeChiller will take the place toward turn 1. He remains ahead. Hunted having to stick in behind. But it's not over yet with this 3-car race. They're fighting for what they believe could be 3rd if George and Scyther take each other out. They do have a long, long history, George and Scyther, in the last couple of months. So I don't expect them to race with the most respect in the world, to say the least. But I also don't expect them to be dirty with one another either. So 22 laps remaining. The medium tires for Valk on 20 laps. She's got a pit stop should be made here within the next 5 to 10 laps. Can she go a little bit further? Maybe a little. But George, now in the penalty club.
Yeah, he just turned in a little too early at the start of Ascari, and that's why he has that track limit penalty. Ascari is very infamous in this league, in any division, for track limit penalties here. I mean, you wind up turning slightly too early in a couple of the corners in Ascari, or turn a bit too late, and that can leave you vulnerable to track limit warnings and then track limit penalties. George, unfortunately, in that regard, cusp, which means now Scyther is looking at provisionally 3rd place at this time.
And he's got worse battery there for good measure, just to point that out. So George is playing the conservative game in comparison to Scyther, and they are gaining on Valk. She does have to make another pit stop. If she pits right now, she's going to lose 23 seconds. She will come out behind Leighton, but ahead of Kipu. So this podium we're talking about with Valk, you know, there's a lot that has to happen in order for her to still be on it. If she's going mediums the rest of the way, that is very, very unrealistic. But with the help of safety cars, with the help of virtual safety cars, it makes her more likely to make it. Just doesn't mean she'll make it to lap 50, because there's that to consider. Kipu, penalty in DRS of Luke now. Got a 3-car battle up in front. And now in that 3-car battle, add the Chiller's name to the penalty club. And Owen's blaming himself for a collision that he was involved in. That sent him out of the race. And now it is Valk finally into the pit lane. Scyther, outside line. He's going to take the place. It's second. That is his now over George. Hunted 2 with DRS. Slingshots past a Chiller, who has a penalty. The Chiller running the back of him, just having trouble there. Looking at Owen's incident now, he hopped onto the curb, ran into Gecko, and Gecko had no other choice but to run into him. It was a cause and effect there. Obviously, the cause of the original incident was Zach. The effect was that it caused others behind that to have to take evasive action, and it caused just a pile up to just continue all the way to the end of Ascari. And speaking of just effects, Hunted is now a part of the penalty club, meaning ETSR Leighton would take net P4 right now.
Yeah, indeed. I just watched. I was watching as well, and as you saw in the start of Ascari, Zach did definitely hit into the back of Luke, which one was sending him spinning, and then with Owen and Luke, and then with Owen and Gecko, like I said, Owen down on the grass came up, made contact with Gecko, and basically Gecko was basically a ping pong ball, when he got bumped by Gecko, when Gecko got bumped by Owen rejoining, Scyther was there and got bumped by Scyther, and that's why him and Owen went around. So I mean, just from seeing that incident, I mean Owen did wind up in main fault. I mean, it may sound biased. It may sound biased from me, but I think the little bump that Scyther gave to Gecko was just complete. I think what looks completely accidental, as Scyther probably had nowhere to go, and like Gecko was going a little bit slower, was going quite a lot slower, and Scyther probably had nowhere to go and didn't have enough reaction time.
I don't think Scyther would take anyone out on purpose, so I don't think that's any bias there. Of course, it'd be accidental, but one thing I will say in terms of the Zach thing with Luke, yeah, I do expect Zach to face a penalty for that easily. Zach is in fact, so we'll see what happens for him now, part of the 2-stop race here. The thing with him and Luke, I think it makes it look a little bit worse, though, just because after he hit Luke, Luke had been spun around 180 degrees, would have been about 90 degrees, but Gecko had nowhere to go and ran into the back of Zach, and Luke was not ghosted until a little bit later. So obviously maybe more rear wing damage to Luke because of that, maybe. I feel like it is affecting Luke, and now Zach does come out ahead of Hunted and the Chiller, but he's going to have to make the most of these soft tires if he wants to have a chance at extending a gap to hold on to what could be a race win. I mean, we're only assuming he's going to be penalized in the steward's office. I mean, we're commentators. We're not really supposed to give much of our opinion, but I think it's quite obvious who was at fault for the collision. The Hunted one looked a little tricky. I think it's more Zach at fault, but I'm going to let the stewards decide. I'm not going to give much more input myself on anyone's behalf, but I will say Zach knows he could be facing trouble regardless, and that he does have to calm it down. Yano and Kippo are racing toward turn number 4. Yano for Ferrari is ahead. Those are the two teams with their home race this weekend with Monza and Imola, and now it is settled between them two for 9th and 10th. With Zach on those soft tires, I mean, those soft tires are going to be good for a decent bit. They will make the rest of the race. I'm absolutely sure of that. But I don't know if they'll be faster than the mediums come the end of the race, though. So that's the concern. If you're Zach, you just have to make the most of them over race leader Scyther now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking at the gap right now, he's 7.2 seconds behind Scyther right now. He's about 4 seconds behind his teammate George at the moment. But I mean, don't forget, George is loaned from the Ferrari Academy. He's not like part of Red Bull Academy. He's just on loan to the team. So, I mean, knowing George, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he'd like to give Zach a little bit of a fight, possibly. I don't know really, because he knows that Zach is going to be facing trouble for the incident that happened with Luke, and George would love to have some extra points on him for sure. I mean, and then Leighton though, Leighton right now currently in 6th, but with the penalties, he's looking at net 4th place right now. But I mean, he's gonna have to try to maintain ground to the Chiller, because in about 0.4 of a second, he is gonna be outside of the 3-second gap to the Chiller, and Chiller will be looking to keep 4th place. Oh, and I think that probably is a definite now, because Leighton got really loose in the middle of Parabolica, and now Leighton unfortunately out of range as Hunted now goes down the inside of the Chiller. It's a head contact by the Chiller into Hunted, but Hunted still keeps it together, but the Chiller comes out a little worse for wear, and that might give Leighton a little bit of an edge to try to catch back up.
You know my opinion? Hunted with what happened right there. I think the Chiller backed off knowing I might get a penalty for that. I as in the Chiller. I think the Chiller knew he might get a penalty for that, so what he did is he simply just wanted to stay behind and not try to overtake, because he had a chance to. He just didn't after that. One thing I will say, you mentioned George and Zach. How about George and Scyther, the top two right now? George has closed that gap down on Scyther, and I'm gonna give you my honest opinion. I think if it's George, I don't think he cares. I think he'd let Zach go, because I don't think he'd want Scyther to win. I think he despise, as far as I'm aware, him and Scyther despise one another. I know I'm making it a little bit over dramatic there, but I don't think they like each other at all from what I've heard and been told. And considering the way Scyther's Ferrari stint ended, yeah, I'd want to win over George too. But if I'm George, I wouldn't want Scyther to win either if I'm in his shoes. So I totally get it. Here's the Chiller picking off Hunted for 4th place in this race. Both have penalties, and we'll have to be careful about this battling, because if they continue to do so, it can become Leighton's place. And if Zach faces enough penalties right now and doesn't get any places right here, Leighton could be taking a podium in the steward's room. But this is only what ifs if he does get penalized heavily enough.
I agree completely. Anything is likely to happen. There's only 15 laps left in this race. And don't forget, also with Hunted and the Chiller battling, now is it going to bring Leighton closer to them? But don't forget, it's also going to bring Valkyrie back into it as well, because she's on the mediums, 5-lap-old mediums, and she has more grip and better rubber on those tires than the guys ahead of her.
Yeah, I don't think she's on for a podium, but I think she's definitely on for P4 though. She has better tire wear. Just got to use it. Just got to maximize it like Scyther did when catching Zach. And now we got a 3-car battle on our hands for our race lead. It is Scyther holding on, George in 2nd with DRS, and now Zach with that fastest lap. Here comes George. Luke's got a penalty, but right now it's all kicking off for the race lead. George is going to regain that race lead. Oh, and he goes too deep. He goes too deep. And now Scyther takes advantage for the race lead. He will regain the top spot, and George falls down to 3rd from 1st as Hunted now takes 4th spot back over.
Yeah, George.
Zach's gaining. Zach's gaining.
Ooh, here we go.
Round the outside gets the move done. He's in the race lead, but he's got to pull away now.
As I was saying, going down to the turn 1 got way too ambitious. He really wanted to go for that. He really wanted that lead, but overshot into turn number 1, and he came out worse for wear in that regard. As Seidler wanted to take that lead back, and also Zach getting ahead, and now Zach's in the penalty club.
Oh, that's even more trouble for our race leader. The best thing George can have is have Zach pull out a DRS from Seither, which I think he's just barely done. And now George can fight Seither. DeChiller, again, just trading spots once again with Hunted. It's like swapping back and forth. It's like, no, you take it. No, you take it. No, I'll take it. DeChiller up to P4.
I mean, these two fight, and it's just, it's like, I mean, I'm probably gonna use a bad taste of it because the Chiller is Italian. It's like two guys fighting over the last slice of pizza at a restaurant. That's basically what Hunter and the Chiller are doing. It's like fighting over a piece of pizza between the two of them. And Hunter,
it's pretty much just mind games. And speaking of mind games, here's George trying to get in Seither's head, gonna go for it down the inside. Seither has to back out of it, and George will make it a Red Bull 1-2, but there are penalties to keep you in mind. It's not over just yet, and the Chiller, I don't think he's gonna have a move being made right there, but he's just gonna taunt Hunted, saying, look, that's my piece of pizza this time here down to Ascari.
Yeah, absolutely. Now Scyther, unfortunately, is out of range against Zach in regards to his penalty, in regards to his track limit penalty. But don't forget, Zach is going to be subsequent to incidents that he was involved in. He's looking at probably 5, maybe 10 for his incident with Luke. Unknown what he may be facing if he is found at fault for this incident with Hunted. So anything is possible, but Zach, by the way, is basically like, in a sense, he's basically 2020 or 2021 Lewis Hamilton setting fastest lap at the fastest lap. That's his 3rd fastest lap in a row in that Red Bull.
And now that's Luke in the 12 seconds club on penalties. Here's Hunted, gonna take 4th place back. How about another swaparoo between them two? Technically previous teammates if you think about it, but Valk will now take 6th over Leighton, but Leighton gives her a little shove there at turn number 1, saying, you're ahead now, but please get moving. We need to get the Chiller and Hunted, and they have a chance to do so, but I think the thing is, though, the Chiller and Hunted just DRS swapping with one another, it's just preventing Valk and Leighton from catching up. They're doing it at the right time, the Chiller and Hunted are, to where I don't think Valk and Leighton can really catch up at this point, unless something drastic happens.
I completely agree, and as you were mentioning, Luke with 12 seconds of penalties, I mean, to be fair, that is actually kind of unusual for Luke to have that many track limit penalties in a race. I mean, Luke, a multi-time Tier 1 champion. I mean, like I said, him to have 12 seconds is quite unusual, and with Yano only having 3 seconds, at the moment, Yano will be taking 8th place from Luke on track limit penalties.
Here comes Scyther, gaining. It's now going to be his spot for 2nd place. He gets to move on the main straight. Scyther can now breathe with ease for now. Speaking of breathing with ease, I don't think Hunt is going to do that much longer on the Chiller, unless they're planning a swap here and working together. Doesn't look like it on this straight. Leighton still going to stay behind Valk for P6 in this race. No penalties to their name. They're 2 of the only 3 drivers in the points without any penalties alongside their name. And just to give you some reference, though, Titan, in Tier 1, over the 9 times I think we've ran Italy, yes, 9 times. We've had an Alpine win once, we've had a Ferrari win 3 times, Mercedes win 3 times, and a Red Bull win only twice.
And as you were mentioning about with the Alpine getting it done, that was Lewis Piper in season 8. That was when TB in the Ferrari and Reese in the Red Bull came together on the final lap, and Lewis Piper saw an opening, took the lead, and wound up pulling off a miracle Alpine victory. Whoa! Leighton almost lost it in the middle of Ascari. I was on board with him, but he loses a lot of ground on Valkyrie.
George does intercept P2 over Scyther. He can now claim that spot once again, but those soft tires from Zach seem to be wearing a little bit. Not as fast. DeChiller into the pit box. What's going to happen here for DeChiller? Why is he pitting? Now becomes my question. He's going to the softs. Maybe not feeling comfortable with those hard tires. As the chat has mentioned, DeChiller masterclass in strategy. In a sarcastic manner.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiller was on. I mean, he was one of the originals that basically was on the mediums all the way to like lap 25, then came in, got to the hards, and maybe I don't know. I mean, it is a bit unusual for the Chiller to be in there now. I mean, it's possible maybe the hards were wearing quicker than he thought, or maybe he didn't like Zach having that lap, as now Leighton is in the penalty box now. That leaves Scyther and Valkyrie with no penalties on them.
Trouble facing his name, Leighton, that's for sure. It's unfortunate because he's going to make it to the end for the first time in this game cycle in an RPL race, it seems. He's had a really good one, to say the least, but that penalty will cost him later. Speaking of penalties, Scyther going to overtake the guy in second who had a penalty. It's going to be Scyther up to second place now, making the overtake on the main straight.
Yes, if they're just going war to war with George as they're fighting it over with second place. All the while, this is going to have Zach pulling away. Well, maybe not, possibly, because he was over 9 seconds ahead of Scyther when Scyther passed George on the main straight, and Scyther has clawed back about 3 to 4 tenths coming out of the second Lesmo.
George, 80% of that battery, finally using a bit, trying to make sure Scyther does not gap him out of DRS, and Zach still pulling away, but not at an egregious rate. We still have 11 runners left in this race of the 16 that started. We've lost 5, and 2 of the drivers still in here include AlphaTauris, 2 Astons still left, 2 Red Bulls still left. I think everyone else has lost their other car that they had, and now Valk, another driver in the penalty club as well. She is one of 9 drivers in this race still left with a penalty. And we've got less than 10 laps remaining. It's going to be crunch time. 9.3 the gap. George also closing in on Scyther on the main straight, but just not enough to make anything of it. At turn 1, Scyther losing the rear at turn 2. George would be there to pounce, but Scyther turns on the jets in that battery. He is going to make sure George cannot overtake him into turn number 4.
Yeah, very, very true. The car got a little squirrely on him. No doubt about that. Now, I do wonder if Scyther gets himself into the penalty box. This technically means that, well, I mean, minusing out the people that are DNF'd and such, only leaves one guy left without a penalty on him, and that is Invade. I mean, I don't even know if in any stage in RPL in history, either in FE, Tier 2, F2, or Tier 1, I don't think we've had a race where everyone in the race had at least a track limit penalty.
The only one I can remember that I can recall from F2 is the one race in Abu Dhabi a couple game cycles ago. I think it was Matt GW and Luke on comms. I think everybody in the field, even 18 runners were left in this race. Everybody had a penalty, I think, barring one. And then on the last lap, there was one who got a penalty. So I think it has occurred, but it's been a very long time and definitely not occurred in this game cycle. George now will reclaim second place in this race. Scyther wants to regain that second place spot, but he's gonna have to do a little bit more to do so. George still looks healthy on that battery, 79% compared to Scyther's 57. And DeChiller battling AMS Yano. DeChiller, home race, is an Italian driver. Yano, a home race for the Ferrari team. I was about to say Alfa Romeo. Here comes DeChiller on the outside. Yano was in Alfa Romeo last week with a good run in Spain, but DeChiller, oh, little contact there. But in the wheel-to-wheel combat, DeChiller does prevail.
Oh, man. This is getting quite wild. Nonetheless, in regards to it, but yeah, Scyther trying to strengthen his way to try to catch George and everything. I mean, all the while, Zach is still pulling away from this field. He is currently 12 seconds clear of Scyther, but factor in that 3-second track limit penalty, it'll drop down to 9. But there is only 6-7 laps left to go in this race as Scyther gets past again, this time and yet on the side, heading down the main straight. Yeah, so Zach currently feeling comfortable right now with that 8-second lead, which includes that 3-second track limit penalty being applied. But I mean, he's gonna have to pull a little bit more if he really wants to keep that first win.
George and Luke are the only two drivers to have done
might be able to
one stop.
I think he might be able to gain a bit more ground because he is kept up to the Alpha Tauri of Invade.
Invade gonna help the Academy here? Am I seeing this right? I'm liking this. Yano with a penalty. Add another to his name. He is now on 6 seconds. And move being made. We got Luke Grange and Leighton. Luke Grange will take the spot into turn number 4. British driver versus British driver. Luke gonna kick up some kitty litter, but looks to be okay. A lot of cloud cover. I thought there would have been some rain maybe heading toward the circuit, but I don't think it's gonna happen. Just getting a little cloudy compared to the start of this race. The gap now with the penalty added is about to become 10 seconds. That's ideally at the minimum what Zach needs, but I'm sure you'd like a little bit more of a buffer to have over Scyther. And here comes George again, gaining, and not even using the battery. He's going to wait and save it, and he does get second place over Scyther. George up to second, Scyther back down to third, and we still have a little over 5 laps remaining here in this race.
Very true indeed. And yeah, Invade has now gone official 1 lap down in this race, and Zach did use Invade as help for DRS. So now Scyther currently 14 seconds behind Zach, which will then turn into 11 seconds. So at the moment, even with the penalties that Zach will be facing for the Luke incident, if he is found not at fault for the hunted one, he is good. He is in good clear air to keep that first win at this present moment.
Yeah, I think George really, I don't think he's trying to back him up at all, Scyther, but I really think he's just sitting here, just losing some tire wear on those hards and just not getting on full cylinders like he was. Also, you got to remember who he's battling. He's battling Scyther. He's not going to race him the same way he'll race someone like Owen or Jack or Luke or even a friend like Hunted. I don't think he's going to race Scyther the same way. Doesn't mean, like I said earlier, it doesn't mean that, you know, Scyther's going to end up being raced dirty, but it's going to mean that George is not going to give the same amount of respect that he gives those guys as well. But Scyther, using a bit of the battery, he served a little bit, but George almost at full battery right here. That's how much of a difference it is. Scyther gets the move done. He's up in place once again, but just a couple laps remaining. Luke's around right in front of Leighton.
Yeah, Luke spins out in the Parabolica. That is going to give Leighton the 6th place back. Schiller now down up into 7th. Yano up into 8th. And Luke now in 9th. Now, despite Luke having that 12 seconds track limit penalties, he's still going to stay in 9th place.
And look at this gap now between Scyther and George. If George ends up overtaking him, the gap becomes 15 seconds, technically 12 with that penalty added from Zach. The thing I'm looking at here, with that being said, Scyther's keeping it clean on track limits. Only one of the points not to have a penalty. Just keep this in mind, although he's using that battery much more to try to pull a gap on George. Can't seem to do so. George trying to counter it. The thing I look at is if this gap becomes 15 seconds, I think Zach will be a little bit more comfortable, to say the least, in terms of being penalized afterwards. Again, we're not saying it's definite, but we're saying it's very, very likely. We can't just assume. But George now down to 60% of the battery. Scyther almost below 20% right now. And George not going to go for it, but going to stay in behind once more. Zach not pulling away like he once was. But also, this battling could still change the factor and the outcome of this race.
Very true indeed, and just slightly further back, looks like the chiller is all over on Leighton, trying to get past him, and he sneaks a peek down on the inside and gets it done. The chiller up in the 6th place, and slowly but surely, I think by the looks of it, I did see Valkyrie was starting to gain a little bit of ground on Hunted, so it's possible Valkyrie versus Hunted. Maybe we could see a last lap fight between the two of them.
And them two do have past collisions to remember that they do have. So factor that in when they're racing one another. Past collisions, knows you have to get a little bit more room to one another to avoid that. 15 seconds now, the gap. Zach has found a little bit of time. He should be able to avoid punctures unless he's just absolutely been on rails in terms of those tires. But he's been on rails in terms of his speed today. He's just got to avoid getting penalized heavily enough in the steward's office afterwards. Again, we're basically assuming it's coming, but it's probably coming. And it seems like he's continuing to pull a gap on Scyther. George is there to pounce. I don't think George is simply just pouncing because of Zach. I think he's pouncing because it's Scyther. He's not got a friendship with him anymore after the Ferrari days and the way that things ended there, like I said earlier. But George, most Tier 2 wins without a title, tied with 1 or 2 other drivers. Scyther, he's got 25 F1 wins. Leighton around.
Yeah, Leighton got a little ambitious to try to get past the chiller, and I think he might have clipped the inner curb of turn 1 and wound up getting into contact with the chiller. I'll have to look at that again. But that was quite a mess there, and unfortunately that left in losing out on a chance to get 6th place. And Valkyrie trying her best to stay with Hunted, and I think possibly she was in the verge of attempting to get within DRS of Hunted.
George still not using battery, but he doesn't have DRS this time, George. He can't make the move at turn 1. He's going to have to go for a last lap charge on Scyther. It's the American driver versus the Welsh driver.
On this final lap.
Yeah, you got a British driver leading, and yeah, he's just ready for it. He's ready to take it on, and he can do so. Got 10 viewers here. Keep in mind, next week for Formula Endurance, we're in Hungary, Tier 2's in Saudi, and F1's in Monaco. Make sure to follow the Twitch. Now Scyther gets into the gravel a little bit, and that gap is now 15 seconds. I think Zach's feeling a little more safer as Yano gets by Leighton, and now Luke trying to have a peek into turn 1. Can't do so, but there was contact front wing to rear gearbox, and now George did have a DRS there, but now he's got 100% on the battery, and he's waiting to use it. Penultimate lap done, final lap underway, and it's Zach who will try to see the flag for the first time, and now the battery is turned on. Here's Scyther playing a little bit of games with George. Already trying to break the slipstream, and Valk is now right on the back of Hunted for 4th place in this race. Both have penalties, so it's even game between them. Drag race now to turn 1. Here's George. Battery being used. DRS applied. Here goes George on the inside line. He takes 2nd place away from Scyther, trying to make it a Red Bull 1-2, but he does have a penalty.
Yeah, Scyther and George having that last lap fight to go for that 2nd place spot. Despite George having that penalty, meanwhile, on board with Valkyrie, she's looking for a move. She's trying, she makes contact with Hunted, just can't seem to get it done. Hunted maintains.
Well, we'll see if Scyther can pick off George with maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 more opportunities. We're now coming to the final sector. Zach is in the race lead, and he's trying to pull a bigger gap to not face a big penalty in the steward's office. Here comes Scyther. Scyther has the run. He's got the momentum to the outside line. They're going to go side by side. Do they touch? They do, but we switch to the race leader. Zach facing trouble in the steward's office later. Had some collisions, but on debut, the British driver is the winner in Monza. In his first ever RPL
move
start.
on Hunted.
Valk does get by for 4th place, but now George will hold on track for P2. That will become P3 on penalties. George gets his first ever endurance podium, while Scyther takes takes the 4th podium for his
We got a
in
drag
endurance.
race. We got a drag race.
This is gonna get good. Scyther, the championship leader, takes podium number 4, but it's a photo finish between Valk and Hunted, side by side. Valk will take P4 over Hunted. Valk, what an amazing showing from her today in Aston Martin. The Chiller, P6.
Thousandths of a second.
Invade goes penalty free. He is P10. Kipu's P11. Sorry, Invade's P11. Kipu's P10. Leighton's P7. Yano's P8. And Luke, the last runner to come across the line to take P9. Huey, I need a breath. That was the last lap I did not expect to have happen. That's for sure.
Wow.
Whew. Here's the podium. Celebrations underway now. An Alpine podium in Monza. Not the first time, not the last time. Scyther as well, by the way. Podium number 4 on the season. He's the only driver to have repeating podiums this season. George and Zach join the list of Jack, Gecko, Be Good, Owen, TB, Cam, Lennon, KVS, and Haunted to have penalties this season in Formula Endurance. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, like I said, looking at the end of the results here, I mean, I'm gonna be straight up honest. My opinion has not changed. I've made my full decision. I'm actually going to give driver of the day to Leighton. In my opinion, he put up a staunching fight. He was up there close to the podium, and yeah, he had a little bit of a mishap right near the end, but he kept it together and still maintained fighting along in that top 5 for a large majority of the race. I say fair credit to him, and that's why I think he's driver today, in my opinion.
I don't really know who to give it to. I'm like split between 3 people. I mean, Zach, pulling that gap, the strong pace from him, these team principals are going to be looking at him, you know, maybe during the transfer window, getting him out of Red Bull Academy as a reserve and getting him into a full-time seat. I also think as well that Valk is a good shout, P4. And, you know, compromising the strategy, not the best strategy, but still put on a really clean showing and a really good race. I would also give Leighton a shout-out like you did. I'm split between the 3 of them. So I'm going to have your choice be the one that kind of decides it just because of that. It was Leighton you chose, so yeah, as I'm split between the 3 of those, you know, there you go. Leighton and Valk didn't really start up there, so, you know, it makes it more impressive, and they took advantage of the chaos. Zach just had strong pace and just pulled away from pole position, and besides, obviously, the collisions and the mistakes from him in terms of wheel-to-wheel racing, I think he really made a really good showing and a really good effort in his first ever RPL start here tonight. I mean, he's going to be facing trouble later on in the steward's office. We'll see how much it affects him, but in the meantime, he really made a good name for himself pace-wise. Maybe not wheel-to-wheel combat-wise, but pace-wise, he's definitely got a future here for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you completely in that regard. Yeah, it was a wild race. I will not lie. We've seen so many things happen. We've seen chaos. We've seen craziness. We've seen fights. I mean, I'm definitely liking seeing Formula Endurance, and I'm actually looking forward to watching more of these races on the streams as the weeks progress.
I'm glad to see that more people joined us throughout the stream. I mean, we had we started off with 4 to 6 people on average. And at the end, we had 9 to 11 people. So I'm glad to see you guys here for this event. And these events specifically, because, you know, a lot of drivers not feeling happy about 100% race around here. But I didn't mind it. I just think if the attendance was better, if If there wasn't such chaos on the safety car restart, I think we would have got more out of it, though. But I totally get why there were some frustrations with that being said. So, next week, we go to Saudi Arabia for Tier 2, Monaco for F1, and Hungary for Formula Endurance. I think it's 70 laps around that circuit, if I'm correct. Man, that's going to be so tough for some of these drivers. It's going to be torture for some. Some like that circuit, so they won't mind it as much, but any thoughts on where we go to next week for all three series, Titan, for our last wrap-up here tonight? Well, either way, Ferrari came into today leading the Constructors' Championship. Red Bull was 64 points back. I think Red Bull's going to take a good chunk of points out of them. And Mercedes were third, too. McLaren was second. Didn't fully go over that earlier, but that's okay. Didn't really come to matter in the end. But what did matter is that we got a battle from lights to flag in Formula Endurance once again. Round 6 is next week in Hungary, and we've got more racing on the RPL Twitch Tier 2 and F1 that will kick off the weekend, Friday and Saturday. Next weekend, make sure you follow our Twitch to stay updated with things. Our socials are the same name, RPL Formula 1. Catch us on Instagram, Twitter/X, and YouTube to stay updated. But either way, in the meantime, we're going to say goodnight and goodbye. One more weekend of racing this month in January. We'll see you next week here from RPL Streams. Ryan Searles, Titan Iron Wolf, and we're going to say goodnight to you folks. We will see you next week for more racing here in the Realistic Performance League. Good night.